So, in this section, I will talk about two frameworks of the myth. So, when we look past the monsters, Homer's epic is fundamentally about identity, a little bit about trauma, societal breakdown, and what it truly means to come home after your world has been shattered. So, a quick disclaimer, those are my own thoughts on that matter. Feel free to disagree with me or correct me if so desired. Yet, be polite and respectful. I'm open for any kind of discussion, and if I'm wrong about something, I certainly do not have any pride to protect. So, I will admit it, if proper reason is given. So, feel free to state your own opinion as well. Beginning with the cultural meaning, Xenia and civilization. The ultimate litmus test. You see, the entire epic is more or less obsessed with Xenia, which is the sacred ancient Greek law of guest-host hospitality, also referred to as Zeus's law. Now, defying civilization. Every single stop on Odysseus' journey evaluates a society based on how they treat a stranger. The Cyclops are savages because they eat guests, which is an absolute no-no. The Phaeacians are peak civilizations because they clothe and feed a naked stranger before even asking his name. The Suitors are somewhat villainous because they violate Xenia from the inside out. The other one, the ritual meaning, Nostos, and the conquest of death. So that is obviously modern homecoming. The word Nostos, which means homecoming, is the root of our modern word nostalgia, the egg for home. In ancient myth, a Nostos is often a metaphor for a katabasisa descent into death and rebirth. So, when Odysseus rejects Calypso's offer of literal immortality and ageless youth in Book 5, he is making a profound statement. He chooses aging, suffering, and death because a finite human life shared with a mortal partner, in this case Penelope, has more inherent meaning than a static divine paradise, which is a bit ironic given that Odysseus certainly qualifies for the Elysian fields after his corporeal form dies. Wait, let's start with the first one, the law of hospitality, Xenia, or also known as the law of Zeus. You see, in the ancient Greek world, Xenia, which means guest friendship, was not just polite manners. It was a cosmic, religious and legal contract, one that I still obey, by the way, because there were no international laws, passports or police forces. A stranger traveling outside the home territory basically had zero rights. They could be legally enslaved or murdered on sight. Pretty tough times. So, to prevent total savagery, or as the Greeks would call it, barbaric, Zeus Xenios, which is a byname of Zeus, which means Zeus the protector of strangers, guarded this absolute law. A host must offer food, shelter, and safety to any stranger before asking their name. But the guest also must respect the host's home in return. And that is a very critical point, because it does go both ways. If a stranger disrespects or violates the host, as for example the suitors did, definitely, the host, in that case Penelope, is no longer an obligation to follow the sacred law. So, in the Odyssey, Xenia is the ultimate line dividing civilization from savagery. And the entire epic is a series of structural contrasts, testing this law. So, savagery, the total violation of Xenia. When Odysseus explores unknown lands, his primary question is always the same. Are they wild, lawless, and savage? Or do they love strangers and fear, well, a better term would be respect, the gods? Book 9. Homer uses the monsters to show what happens when the law of choice is utterly ignored. Let me give you 3 examples. First, the Cyclops or Cyclops Polypemos, the ultimate anti-host. Instead of offering a guest gift, Xenion, he asks Odysseus' name immediately, mocks choice, which is a huge no-go, and then literally eats the guest, which is also quite a no-go. He turns a sacred ritual into a perverted cannibalistic feast. Then we have the Laestrygonians. These giant cannibals spear Odysseus' men like fish right out of the harbor. They represent a complete lack of assembly, laws, or hospitality. And the third one we already talked about, the suitors in Ithaca. The suitors represent the violation of Xenia from the guest's perspective. So, instead of waiting to be invited, they force their way into Odysseus' palace, slaughter his livestock, abuse his servants, and even plot to murder his son, Telemachus. They are parasites, destroying the host's household, or oikos. But we have also positive examples, the perfection of Xenia. So, to contrast the monsters, Homer provides societies that treat the stranger as a sacred entity. And this is where faithful translations like Latimer or Fagles show the exquisite formal steps of the ritual. Beginning with books 3 and 4, Nestor and Menelaus. We already spoke about those in the first part of the series. So, when young Telemachus arrives as a stranger, these kings immediately seat him at the feast, feed him the best cuts of meat, bathe him in oil, which was a thing back then, and only then, after all of this, they ask who he even is. Another example, the Phaeacians, which is in books 7 to 8. When Odysseus washes ashore, naked and caked in brine, King Alcinous seats him in the place of honor, feeds him, and even hosts athletic games for him, and promises a ship home, before Odysseus even reveals his name. Now, the deeper meaning here is the cosmic balance. And this is very crucial, because cosmic balance is the one thing that you find in all mythologies as the quintessential rule that everything and everyone has to obey. It is the very reason why evil or darkness must exist. So they say. So, by framing the entire epic around Xenia, Homer is telling us that human civilization cannot survive on brute force or raw power. The characters who violate Xenia, whether they are monstrous giants like Polypemos, or wealthy, aristocratic young men like the suitors, are explicitly marked for destruction by the cosmic justice of Zeus. Odysseus is not just a man trying to get home. I mean, he does try it, obviously. He is the literal instrument of Zeus's law, Xenia, executing divine justice upon those who break the sacred bond between human beings, or human-like beings in the case of giants and cyclops. And now the other aspect, the ritual meaning. Nostos, which means homecoming, and the joys of mortality. You see, in the ancient Greek world, a Nostos, which is kind of a journey home or homecoming, was far more than a physical relocation. In mythic and ritual terms, it represents a transition from death back to life. The ocean in Homeric poetry is often treated as a chaotic, lethal void, a cosmic borderland between the known world and the underworld. To be lost at sea for 10 years. Admittedly, quite a lot of time did he spend not on sea. I mean, 7 years on the island of... Anyway, to be lost at the sea for 10 years is to be functionally dead to the world, stripped of your name, your family, and your social existence. You might as well be already dead. So, when we read the epic through this lens, Odysseus' journey is a literal battle against the temptation to fade out of human history, culminating in a profound choice about what it actually means to be human. So, first, the trap of divine stasis. Calypso and Ogygia. We see this theme most powerfully in Book 5 on the island of Ogygia. The nymph Calypso offers Odysseus something that almost no other mortal in Greek myth is ever granted. And a little side note, in the Sumerian, Akkadian, Assyrian, Babylonian mythology, Gilgamesh was even looking for it, and ultimately kind of failed. And that is immortality, athanasia, and ageless youth. Latter is kinda important. If you know a little bit about Greek mythology, you may know that there is one character who is immortal, but does not possess ageless youth. Anyway, beginning with the living death. On Ogygia, there is no pain, no aging, no winter, and no grief. But the price of this paradise is the total erasure of his Nostos. If he stays with Calypso, he will never be remembered. He will have no legacy, no active relationships, and no human identity. His name would be erased from history. He would effectively be dead to the outside. And here we have the choice. Because when Hermes arrives, he finds Odysseus sitting on the shore, weeping as he looks out over the barren sea. Odysseus actively rejects immortality. He explicitly tells Calypso that he knows his mortal wife, Penelope, will grow old and wither, while Calypso remains forever young. But he still chooses to leave. And by choosing Ithaca over Ogygia, Odysseus makes a profound philosophical statement. A finite mortal life filled with struggle, aging, and real human relationships is inherently more valuable than a static, painless divine paradise. Again, it is a bit ironic because Odysseus certainly qualifies for exactly this after he dies, by the entrance into the fields of Elysium. Anyway, human meaning is forged because we die, not in spite of it. Which I must kinda disagree, but that is only my personal opinion on that matter. Now, the descent into death, the Nekuia. To achieve this rebirth, Odysseus must first undergo a literal ritual of death. In Book 11, he travels to the furthest edge of the world to perform the Nekuya, the summoning of the ghosts in the underworlds. First, the lesson of Achilles. In the underworld, Odysseus meets the ghost of Achilles, the ultimate hero of the Iliad, who chose a short, glorious life of war over a long, quiet home life. Odysseus tries to comfort Achilles by praising his eternal fame among the dead. Then the shift in values, because Achilles famously shatters on this old heroic ideal, responding that he would rather be a dirt poor, nameless farmhand on earth than a king of all the dead. This moment is the ideological pivot of the entire epic, because the Odyssey rejects the bloody, death-seeking glory of the Iliad and establishes that survival, preservation of the household, and living to see your family is the truer, higher form of heroism. And here I must say, what good does it do if you die a hero to protect your beloved, when you no longer can be there to continue protecting your beloved? And the last point for this part, the rebirth, the sleep of the Phaeacians. When Odysseus finally leaves the magical world of the monsters to return to reality, Homer frames the transition as a ritual rebirth. In Book 13, the Phaeacians place Odysseus onto their magical swift ship as they sail towards Ithaca. Odysseus falls into a profound, heavy sleep that Homer describes as most sweet, deepest, most like unto death itself. While he is completely unconscious, effectively dead to his past wanderings, the Phaeacians carry him ashore and lay him on the beach of Ithaca at dawn, just as the morning star rises. He wakes up as a blank slate in his homeland. His old life as a wanderer is dead, and his crawling reclamation of his home is about to begin.